Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today's project is building this desktop. So in a previous video I had building the drawers, and today we're going to build the top of this desk, and I got all the video put together and realized it took me 4 hours and 35 minutes to build this. And that was recording all the footage I did. It was probably more than that, actually, because I didn't record absolutely everything I did to build it. But it's a pretty simple process, and we're going to go through it. And this video I actually used some larger shop tools, which you don't have to use. It was just I had access to them, and it was very convenient for me to use those. So go ahead and watch the fun. I'll narrate a little bit here and there, but for the most part, we'll let it go. I'm going to increase it to probably 700 or 800 speed, so it doesn't take 4 hours and 35 minutes to watch. What I'm doing here is squaring the boards up so they're straight all the way across, and they were pretty uneven. So I started with the squarest one I had and used that as a kind of a backer board. So the reason I'm running two boards through it at a time is using my squarest one to square up the other ones, and then I can use that one of those squared out ones to kind of do the fine tuning on that one I was using as my main runner. And after that I'll run them through the joiner and get them even smoother yet, so everything is as straight as it can be, which is the most important part, is to have these as straight as can be so that when you edge glue them together they have a nice tight flat fit. Here you can see what I'm talking about on the edges. They're extremely rough cut, very warbly, and we need to straighten them off with a table saw before I can run them to the joiner and make the edges really nice and smooth. I'm doing two things here. I am not only cleaning up and squaring up one edge of it, I'm also flipping it over to do the other edge, but I am trying to get them relatively close to the same width. It's not real critical when you're doing a laminated top, but it will kind of look better if everything's pretty much the same width. Other than that, you want to make them very different widths so that it'll look intentional and blend well together. As I mentioned previously, you can do this with hand tools and smaller tools, but boy, a large joiner like this sure does make it easy. Here I'm going through and running every single one of the boards through the joiner, making a nice smooth flat edge, and because it's such a wide base on that, it allows me to run the entire board through and make sure everything is straight. And now for the glue up process, I am laying my boards out and doing a visual to see how they best fit together. Going for both the patterns of the boards, the knots, and setting them up so that they are kind of as straight as they can be together. And I'm also going through and installing biscuit joints for extra strength. And I've got a biscuit joiner here, and what I did was draw a straight line across them all with the square and then previously there, and then I'm going through and cutting in biscuit holes so I can install the biscuits as I do the glue up process. Just gives a little extra strength to the glue hold. Not only do you have the edge glue, you have the biscuit hold, which improves the overall integrity of the top. Another benefit of building it in this wood shop is an almost unlimited supply of clamps, which is awesome. So I'm able to use the edge joining boards with my biscuit cuts and clamp the crap out of them. So we're going to do a row of glue, gluing into each of the biscuits, installing the biscuits, and then putting the board on top, which is already measured out to lay down, and then using a rubber mallet to connect them together, and then doing the same process for the next board, and the board after that, and the board after that, and the board after that. And then we can clamp everything together and give us ourselves a nice tight fit and let it dry overnight. So the final glue stage is done. I do have some planing I'm going to have to do. A couple of these didn't line up just right. It's really tall on that side. I think I may undo the clamps and try and fix that. Most of them just need a little bit of sanding, but that one's pretty bad. With the clamps off, I can start the planing process. I'm starting with a powered hand planer. It's not the best one. It's actually got a cut in one of the blades, but it does a pretty good job of knocking the really high stuff off. And I'm going to make a couple of passes with this. I'm actually going crossways with it, one direction and then the other. And now I'm going to use a hand planer, which I can do a little bit better job with and a little smoother. Again, making X patterns with it. With the planing all done, I'm going to switch to a powered belt sander, and that's going to get the initial rough sanding done, and we're going to be down to like 200 grit on the belt sander, and we'll be able to go through and get all of the planing marks off with this, and then after that we'll move on to a palm sander. Here I'm using the track saw to square the ends up, and this is a nice little device. You clamp down the track and get your square, and then use the saw that comes with it to give you a nice square, or in this case, rectangular table to the length that I wanted. Progress, but still a lot more sanding to go. Got the huge lumps out. I need some new sandpaper for my belt sander. Still some lumps there. Alright, so I got a 45 on the router, and I'm going to cut 45 around the top. I already set my depth, tested it on a scrap piece. And then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do a round over on the bottom just so it's more comfortable to slide underneath when I'm sitting at the desk. Well, 45 also took out a lot of the defects in the clamping that was in the edges. You can see some of the defects on the bottom still. I'm going to do the round over, that'll take those out. I've got the round over depth set. That's going to make a nice smooth area to roll my chair up against on the bottom of the table. There we go. Took out some of those imperfections. See a spot I need to touch up there. But for the most part, that's going to be a nice place to roll my chair up against. Nice smooth area. And because these are so thick, there's plenty of space in the middle. The bottom isn't flush, flat. I'm not really concerned about the bottom. They're just going to be sitting on top of the drawers, so I'll just leave that alone. And now the stage we've all been waiting for, the staining stage. We're going to give it a coat of stain, let it dry, and then start in with the polyurethane. I'm actually going to do multiple layers of polyurethane and sanding in between each layer to give it the nicest finish that I can get. I'm not super concerned about the finish, primarily because it's going to be my desk workspace and I'm going to have a lot of stuff on my desk as normal. But it'll look a lot better as we get more coats of poly on it. And a quick tip for you, I'm making a sanding block. I'm just cutting a couple of pieces of thin wood and and then wrapping sandpaper around it and then screwing another piece to the top of that. And then I have a sanding block that I can work with for no money whatsoever, other than a couple of screws. Works well. And I'm going to use that sanding block to sand down every coat. So I'm sanding down before I put in the first coat of poly, put on the coat of poly, let it dry, and then sand that down, and then do another coat, and then sand that down and do another coat. I'm also using some tack cloth here to make sure the surface is as clean as it can possibly get before I go on to the poly. Okay, we're ready to start. I think it's the 5th coat, or the 4th coat. And we need to do a quick sanding again between poly coats, as always. If you'll, I don't know how well it's going to show up in the camera, but if you'll notice, there's some raised spots. There's a little more poly, just because it doesn't flow very well when there's still dry areas. Still a bit of lumping here and there. Still some dry spots. This needs a little more. This is a little thick here. There's some ridges there. So that's what the sanding does. We'll sand that down, and then we'll get another coat on it. This is looking pretty good in this area, although there's still some dry spots there. The lighting's a little better this morning. Light coming in the windows, so it should make it easier for me to cover. Now on this end, because we're finally getting good coverage everywhere, you'll notice that it's all turned white and cloudy. That's actually a good thing. That means that we've got a good layer of poly going down. Once I clean that, wipe it off, run a tack cloth over it, and put more poly down, that'll completely disappear and it'll be clear as can be. Should have mineral spirits for that stage. I'm just going to go grab a paper towel and damp it a little bit with some water. Run it over it, let it dry for a few minutes, and then use the tack cloth. Obviously, if I was doing this for somebody else, I'd work a lot harder on it, but I need my computer desk, so I'm just going to push on through, and I think it's going to look just fine. There's that coat finished, and it's covering a lot better. It's still not the smoothest, but that's Can you treat it to the temperature in here? It's like 50 degrees, maybe 45, somewhere in that area. It's an oil-based, so it can handle this, but it doesn't cover as well as it should if it were warmer. But I can't stain in poly inside because of the smell. And since I don't have a large heated shop, it is what it is. Fortunately, I'm not a perfectionist. Hence the name of the channel. So we'll let this dry, let it smooth out as it dries a little bit, and then we'll see how it looks.